This is a map of Western Asia, and if you take a look at the Levant area of the Fertile Crescent on the east bank of the Jordan River, you will find the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan situated at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe. The magnificent nation is bordered by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the south and east, Iraq to the northeast, and Syria to the north. In the west, Jordan is bordered by the Palestinian West Bank, Israel, and the Dead Sea. The coastline on the Gulf of Aqaba's Red Sea lies in the northwest of Jordan and is 26 kilometers long. It separates Jordan from Egypt. The country covers an area of 89,432 square kilometers. The distance between its northernmost and southernmost points, Qais and Aqaba, is around 400 kilometers. Amman is the capital and largest city in the country. It is also the economic, political, and cultural center of the country. The east region of Jordan is an arid plateau irrigated by oases and seasonal water streams, while the major cities are overwhelmingly located on the northwestern part because of its fertile soils and relatively abundant rainfall. The modern-day Jordan has been inhabited by humans since the Paleolithic era. By the end of the Bronze Age, three distinctive kingdoms emerged in the region: Ammon, Moab, and Edom. The Arab Nabateans established their kingdom back in the 3rd century BC. The capital of this kingdom was Petra. Other notable rulers of the Transjordan region include the Assyrian, Babylonian, Roman, Byzantine, Rashidun, Umayyad, Abbasid, and the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was partitioned by the British and France after the Great Arab Revolt of 1916 during World War I, and soon after the Emirate of Transjordan was established in 1921 by Emir Abdullah I, who was a Hashemite. The Emirate became a British protectorate. However, after World War II ended, Jordan became independent in 1946. The semi-arid nation has a population of over 10 million, making it the 11th most populous Arab country. Jordan also forms part of the Holy Land, which is a popular pilgrimage destination. With more than 100,000 archaeological, religious, and tourist sites, the spectacular country boasts a culturally and scientifically rich history. From the oldest dam in the world to mind-boggling ancient structures and statues, all kinds of unbelievable and downright terrifying structures and artifacts dating back thousands of years have been discovered. Although the most intriguing natural feature of the Hashemite Kingdom is the mysterious Dead Sea, which has baffled scientists for decades now. The Dead Sea, also known as the Salt Lake, is bordered by Jordan to the east and the West Bank and Israel to the west. Lying in the Jordan Rift Valley, the sea is mainly fed by the Jordan River. As of 2019, the surface of the lake is around 430.5 meters below sea level. This means its shores are the lowest land-based elevation on the planet. At 304 meters, it is the deepest hypersaline lake in the world, having a salinity of 343 grams per kilogram. It is regarded as one of the saltiest water bodies in the world, almost 9.6 times as salty as the ocean. The lake has a density of 1.24 kilograms per liter, so swimming in it is like floating. Scientists initially believed that salinity of this unique water body produced an incredibly harsh environment that could not support animal or plant life. That is also why it was named the Dead Sea. It is true that the high salinity prevents macroscopic organisms like fish and aquatic plants from living in it, but researchers have found minuscule quantities of bacteria and microbial fungi in the water. During the flooding periods, the salt content of the Dead Sea can drop 30 to 35% below its usual level. That is when the Dead Sea temporarily comes to life. After a rainy spell back in 1980, the typically dark blue Dead Sea turned red, leaving the locals puzzled. However, researchers from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem later revealed that the Dead Sea was teeming with an algae known as Dunaliella. This microorganism in turn nourished carotenoid-containing halobacteria, whose abundance in the water rendered it crimson. However, the Dead Sea Basin has been dry and the bacteria or algae have not returned in measurable amounts since 1980. In 2011, a team of scientists from Beersheba, Israel, and Germany found fissures in the floor of this salt-rich lake. They had been scuba diving to the bottom and observing the surface. According to them, the fissures allowed fresh and brackish water to seep into the Dead Sea. After sampling biofilms surrounding the fissures, they discovered several species of bacteria and archaea. The Dead Sea also bears immense historical significance and has attracted visitors from around the Mediterranean basin for thousands of years. It was actually one of the first health resorts in the world and has been the supplier of a wide variety of minerals like asphalt for Egyptian mummification and potash for fertilizers. However, the lake has been receding at an alarming rate. The surface area today is 605 square kilometers, while back in 1930, it used to be 1,050 square kilometers. And what lies around the Dead Sea is equally intriguing as what lies inside it. Between 1946 and 1956, an entire collection of ancient Jewish and Hebrew religious manuscripts was discovered in the Qumran caves. These caves were part of what was then mandatory Palestine near Ein Feshka in the West Bank on the northern shore of the Dead Sea. These manuscripts are also called the Dead Sea Scrolls or the Qumran Cave Scrolls and date back to between the 3rd century BCE and the 1st century CE. They were discovered by a Bedouin shepherd and a team of archaeologists. Initially, 7 scrolls were unearthed by shepherds in a cave near the Qumran site. These scrolls are considered a keystone in the history of archaeology and bear immense historical, religious, and linguistic significance, as they include the oldest surviving manuscripts of entire books. These books were later included in the biblical canons, along with deuterocanonical and extra-biblical manuscripts that preserve evidence of the diversity of religious thought in the late Second Temple Judaism. They also cast new light on the emergence of Christianity and Rabbinic Judaism. The majority of the scrolls were taken into possession by Israel and are kept in the Shrine of the Book at the Israel Museum, but their ownership has been disputed by Jordan. The kingdom claims that following the end of the British Mandate for Palestine in 1947, Jordan occupied the area in the 1940 Arab-Israeli War. The area was captured again by Israel along with the scrolls in the 1967 Six-Day War, but some scrolls are still in Jordan's possession and displayed at the Jordan Museum in Amman. Experts haven't been able to identify all of these texts, but according to their observations, around 40% are copied text from the Hebrew Scriptures. Another 30% are texts from the Second Temple period, while the remainder are sectarian manuscripts of previously unknown documents shedding light on the rules and beliefs of particular groups within Greater Judaism. However, the Dead Sea Scrolls aren't the only ancient manuscripts bearing undecipherable texts to be found in Jordan. Back in 2011, a collection of lead codices allegedly discovered in a cave in Jordan were publicized. These were initially pronounced fake by a regional BBC News investigation and a number of scholars. However, a radioactivity test performed in 2016 at the University of Surrey's Ion Beam Centre revealed the old age of the lead. It was also ascertained that the text could not have been added later since it was not inscribed but was formed when molten lead was poured into inscribed forms. But the Israeli Antiquities Authority and the Jordanian Archaeological Department are still not convinced about their authenticity. On March 3, 2011, the Jewish Chronicle ran an interview with metallurgist Robert Feather, who said that they were testing to authenticate a collection of 20 metal books that could be linked to the Kabbalah. The items were in the possession of an Israeli Bedouin farmer, Hassan Seder. According to Hassan, the codices had been discovered by his grandfather in a cave almost a century ago. The story also stated that a leather piece from the codices had already been dated to 2,000 years ago. But the Israeli Antiquities Authority said they were inauthentic and worthless books that are a mixture of incompatible periods and styles without any connection or logic. Such forged motifs can be found in their thousands in the antiquities markets of Jordan and elsewhere in the Middle East. But on March 22, 2011, David Elkington issued a statement confirming the discovery of the hoard of ancient books made of lead and copper, along with other artifacts that probably date back to the 1st century AD in Jordan. He also believed that these codices could predate the writings of St. Paul. Many leading academics thought these might be as important as the Dead Sea Scrolls. According to Elkington, the find consisted of around 70 ring-bound books made of lead and copper. Many were sealed on all sides. Scrolls, tablets, and other artifacts like an incense bowl were also found at the same site. Some of the lead pages were written in a form of archaic Hebrew scripts with ancient messianic symbols, while some of the writing appears to be in the form of code. The director of Jordan's Department of Antiquities, Zayed al-Saad, said the codices could have been made by followers of Jesus in the few decades immediately following his crucifixion. According to a BBC article, the books consist of 5 to 16 leaves or plates, each that are the size of a credit card. They are made of lead and copper and bound together with rings on one side. While Elkington still maintains that the codices are credible and 2,000 years old, the Jordanian Department of Antiquities has refuted his claims, saying there is no solid evidence to support the authenticity of these codices. Recently, archaeologists working deep in the Jordanian desert have discovered a 9,000-year-old ritualistic complex near what they believe could be the earliest known large human-built structure in the world. The Stone Age shrine site was excavated in 2022, and according to experts, it was used by gazelle hunters back in the day. It featured carved stone figures, an altar, and a miniature model of a large-scale hunting trap. These giant game traps represented by the model are so-called desert kites. They were made of long walls that converged to corral running gazelles into enclosures or holes for slaughter. The Jordanian desert kites were mostly stone-built enclosures with long trailing walls and are actually part of a broader phenomenon found throughout certain parts of the Middle East. In fact, similar types of structures are known widely across the world, especially in the deserts of Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkey, and Kazakhstan. The Neolithic-era ritual-style landmark showcasing the trap model was discovered inside a larger campsite on October 2022 by a joint French-Jordanian team called the Southeastern Badia Archaeological Project. In a statement by the SEBA project, it was stated that the nearby desert kites in Jabal al-Kash Abiya are the earliest large-scale human-built structures worldwide known to date. The spectacular and unprecedented discovery of the ritualistic site is quite intriguing. According to experts, it dates back to around 7000 BC. The site features two steles with anthropomorphic features. The taller one is about 1.12 meters high. Other artifacts found at the site include animal figurines, 150 arranged marine fossils, and flints. The decade-old SEBA project aims to study the first pastoral nomadic societies and the evolution of specialized subsistence strategies. Experts believe that these desert kites suggest extremely sophisticated mass hunting strategies that are quite unexpected in such an early time frame. The sacral symbolism was probably meant to invoke supernatural forces for successful hunts and abundance of prey to capture. The research teams have also found campsites with circular dwellings and a huge number of gazelle bones. The discovery is being hailed as a major outcome for both the scientific world and Jordan alike, as it has provided us with priceless testimony of the historical life in the Middle East and how ahead of time its traditions and rituals were. And if you found the animal bones at a hunter-gatherer shrine fascinating, you're in for a treat with this next discovery from Barjar, a Neolithic village located around 14 kilometers north of Petra. Just like the nearby site of Basta, this settlement also dates back to 7000 BC. It was built during the pre-pottery Neolithic B period. Barjar lies at an altitude of 1,160 meters, and the only way to access this village is a climbing route through a narrow, steep canyon. Barjar is regarded as one of the largest Neolithic villages in the Jordan area. Near the entrance of the Barjar site, there is an Islamic settlement with 2 to 3 layers of an older Nabatean settlement. Very little is known about the ancient inhabitants of this village. Archaeologists aren't even sure to what people they belonged. The original name of the village is also a mystery. However, the current name was given to it by archaeologists who named it after the neighboring mountain range. The earliest written record of the residents of this region is taken from the old Hebrew canonical books. In these books, a certain group of people called the Horites who inhabited the general region are described. They were later joined by descendants of Esau, Isaac, and Ibrahim during the 2nd millennium BCE. One of the most magnificent finds from the Barjar archaeological site is the richly furnished tomb of a young girl. In the 9,000-year-old grave, archaeologists discovered a necklace in 2018. The grave belonged to a female child who was placed on her left side in a crouch position. Archaeologists have named her Jamila, and according to them, she was between 8 and 10 years old at the time of her death. A lump of red pigment was also found between her legs and chest, and the other surface of all her bones was stained red. However, the lump of pigment was not the source of the pigment on her bones, and no pigment had been directly applied to her bones. Beads from a multi-string necklace connected to a central mother-of-pearl ring spacer were found in the chest, neck, and the left shoulder. Most of the 2,600 beads were small ring discs made of red limestone. A few were barrel-shaped and cylindrical too. The red dominant bead strands were interspersed with white cylindrical beads made of fossilized clamshells. There were 5 blue disc beads and 2 black hematite spherical beads too. The grave is incredibly rare and is constructed using 80 sandstone slabs and fragments. 3 large slabs form the main structural elements. The detail and attention visible in the tomb suggests the child held a high social status from a young age, which in turn suggests that hierarchical social structure existed in the Neolithic Barjar. Another mind-boggling discovery is from the Shubeika archaeological site that baffled the archaeologists and historians even more than the tomb of Jamila. The researchers found charred remains of flatbread baked by hunter-gatherers almost 14,400 years ago at the archaeological site in northeast Jordan. The remains of bread is the oldest direct evidence of bread found to date, and it actually predates the advent of agriculture by at least 4,000 years. Experts believe that bread production based on wild cereals probably inspired the hunter-gatherers to cultivate the cereals and thereby contributed to the agricultural revolution of the Neolithic period. According to an archaeobotanist at the University of Copenhagen, the presence of charred food remains in the fireplaces of Shubeika is a game-changing discovery that has provided us with a chance to characterize 14,000-year-old food practices. The 24 remains analyzed in the study shows that wild ancestors of domesticated cereals like barley, einkorn, and oat have been ground, sieved, and kneaded prior to cooking. These remains are very similar to unleavened flatbreads found at several Neolithic and Roman sites in Europe and Turkey. This provides evidence that bread-like products were produced long before the development of farming. Shubeika consists of 2 well-preserved superimposed buildings, one of which is a semi-subterranean structure having a carefully built flagstone pavement made of local basalt stones. The structure exclusively comprises Natufian deposits with a rich assemblage of chipped stones, ground stone tools, animal bones, and plant remains. The site was first found and excavated by Alison Betts in the 1990s. Dr. Tobias Richter, an archaeologist from the University of Copenhagen who led the excavations at the Shubeika site, said, "Natufian hunter-gatherers are of particular interest to us because they lived through a transitional period when people became more sedentary and their diets began to change. The flint sickle blades as well as ground stone tools found at Natufian sites in the Levant have long led archaeologists to suspect that people had begun to exploit plants in a different and perhaps more effective way. Being the earliest evidence of bread baking, the flatbread at Shubeika shows that baking was invented before we had plant cultivation. Bread making involved labor-intensive processing that includes dehusking, grinding of cereals, and kneading and baking. The fact that it was actually produced before farming began suggests that it was considered special, and the desire to make more of this special food most likely contributed to the decision to start cultivating cereals. Now, if you take a closer look at the map of Jordan, you will notice the ancient city of Petra located around 150 miles south of Jerusalem and the capital of Jordan, Amman. Petra is also referred to as Rose City because of the color of the stones used in its buildings. The magnificent city dates back to the 4th century BC and was established by the Nabateans as a trading post. Given the rugged mountainous terrain, Petra doesn't seem like a logical place to build a city, but somehow the Nabateans took advantage of its geography while they erected key structures of the city using the technique called rock-cut architecture. After suffering multiple attacks and being conquered by the Greeks, Romans, and the Byzantines, the wealthy city lost its standing, and by the beginning of the 8th century AD, Petra was largely abandoned. The ancient residents of Petra might have lost interest in the city, but the modern archaeologists consider it a treasure trove of knowledge, especially after a colossal monument was discovered buried under the sands at the Petra World Heritage Site a few years ago. It was revealed in a study published in the American Schools of Oriental Research that archaeologists use satellite images, drone photography, and ground surveys to locate the find. The huge platform is almost as long as an Olympic swimming pool and twice as wide. According to researchers, the structure is unlike any other they found at the ancient site. The study describes it as hiding in plain sight. The surface pottery indicates that the platform was built sometime in the mid-2nd century BC, when Petra was a flourishing and wealthy center of commerce. Some believe that the structure could have served as a ceremonial site. In the survey, it was also revealed that a smaller platform contained inside a larger one was also found. It was once lined with columns on one side and a vast staircase on the other. Christopher Tuttle, the executive director of the Council of American Overseas Research Centers, stated that someone in decades of excavation had to know the structure was there, yet it had not been written up. He also said, "I've worked in Petra for 20 years and I knew that something was there, but it's certainly legitimate to call this a discovery." And just like the platform of Petra, an ancient archaeological mystery remained hidden under the modern features of Jordan's capital city, Amman. During excavation works to install a water drainage system in downtown Amman, a Roman archaeological site featuring baths and a crematorium was unearthed. The 2nd century tiled Roman baths with heated cellars and a crematorium were found at the site just opposite the Roman amphitheatre. The local authorities were installing a system to control floods which have damaged shops and architectural sites in the area. These sites could have ended up completely submerged by the Amman River between 1964 and 1971, as the river usually flooded in the surrounding areas in winter. But now the river has been completely covered and paved over. A professor of architecture and urban planning at the Al-Balqa Applied University emphasized that the site needs to be preserved and any attempts to remove the bathhouse should be stopped. The authorities did halt the infrastructure work that could have further damaged the site, which is now considered as significant as Beirut's landmark Roman baths. The remnants of furnaces in the baths are a sign of an elaborate heating system which, according to archaeologists, is the first such discovery among the remains of the ancient city of Philadelphia, over which Amman was built. The rapidly growing infrastructure and haphazard urban planning has already damaged the layers of ancient civilizations buried underneath. The growing population of the city in the last few decades because of the regional turmoil and waves of refugees from the Arab-Israeli war has also made things worse. Now archaeologists and historians are concerned that the development projects will dismantle the treasured ancient relics. It is estimated that around 100,000 archaeological sites exist in Jordan, but only 0.02% of these have been recorded so far. Now, people in Jordan are used to waking up to new archaeological discoveries, but back in 2021, they found something incredibly mysterious and unsettling. The locals and authorities were baffled by a small water body located near the Dead Sea that suddenly transformed into a pool of blood. The water in this pool neighboring the Dead Sea mysteriously turned blood red. Pictures of this strange phenomenon were shared by several social media users, and they showed the deep red-colored water, the cause of which still remains unexplained. The Water Ministry of Jordan dispatched technical teams to take samples and run tests to figure out what caused the water's color to change so swiftly. Some conspiracy theorists even said it could be the biblical plague of blood, as the pool is located in what used to be the biblical region of Moab. The eastern shores of the Dead Sea where the blood-red pool is located also happens to be the place where the two legendary cities of Sodom and Gomorrah stood before they were destroyed by God for their wickedness, according to legend. But scientists think the reason behind this color change is quite simple. According to the head of the Jordanian Geologist Syndicate, he pointed out that the red color could have been caused by algae, iron oxide, or the addition of substances by people to change the color of the water. A spokesperson for the ministry, Omar Salama, told the news outlets that the pond is pretty small and isolated from the waters of the Dead Sea. Many Jordanians, however, think that the pool was polluted or used as a dumping ground for harmful chemical waste by the local authorities, and now they're trying to cover it up by pitching possible reasons that don't make sense. And they could be onto something owing to a similar event that scared the people when the Alexander River ran blood red back in 2020 because of the blood from slaughterhouses in the West Bank that flowed into the river, according to a report by the Society for Protection of Nature in Israel.